Once upon a time, there was a woman who loved to find feathers. Luckily, she lived in a landscape with a lot of birds, and that was a migratory bird stop. The migratory birds came and went with the changing seasons. There were flocks of different geese. There were cranes, herons, swans, and storks. Birds of prey drew their spirals in the sky. Sometimes the woman saw an osprey. In the meadows and gardens, the small birds flew and bred. In the springtime, she listened to the songs of all the different birds. When the woman went out for a walk, she was on the lookout to find a feather. Should she find one somewhere in the meadow, she was full of joy. She also found other things like an eggshell or an animal skull. And in some rare occasions, she would even find a whole dead bird. She had not the heart to leave it there. She took and added it prepared to her collection. But she rejoiced most of all about finding a feather. While observing the feathers, the woman could not imagine that they could grow out of the delicate body of a bird. She asked herself, what does a bird perceive when it loses a feather? Does it fall out unnoticed like a hair? Or does it hurt when such a big outgrowth loosens itself from the body? She loved to observe the different feathers. She was under the impression that the feathers wanted to tell her something. But what could that be? One day, the woman heard that in old times people sang with the birds. She was surprised that any human could sing with birds. The woman pondered why and when this ability had been lost. She remembered the tales about Francis of Assisi, that he spoke to the birds. She was pleased to discover that somebody at least spoke to the birds at some time. But Francis did not sing with the birds. It was also said that Siegfried received the gift of understanding the language of the nuthatch after he bathed himself in the blood of the dragon. But neither did Siegfried sing with them. There was so much knowledge and so many abilities that humans had developed and collected over the centuries. Old knowledge like the baking of bread, and more contemporary knowledge like how to build a bicycle and the ability to ride it. People had not lost the ability to sing. How was it possible that of all things, singing with the birds got lost? The longer the woman pondered this loss, singing with the birds, the more sorrowful she became. After some time, she was so sad that she did not care to get out of bed. She did not walk anymore, and she found no joy in the contemplating her collection of feathers. One morning, as she lay listless in her bed, she heard the wind in the trees in front of her window. Suddenly, she had a thought. The birds spend the largest part of their lives in the air. Birds move effortlessly between the air and the ground. Singing also had to do with the air. The sound waves that birds produce by singing move over large distances through the air. Birds especially use the early morning hours for singing when the air is cold. This favors the transmission of sound over long distances. Air surrounds and permeates everything. What was the relation between the knowledge of the singing with the birds and the air? The woman got up and dressed. She had been lying in bed long enough. She wanted to get outside to find out how the singing and the air were connected. In a book, she found descriptions of sounds that birds produce. Crow, car, crow, and crow, the crane. Uyip, uyip, the osprey. 3 to 5 times in a row, uprum, the bittern. Sounds that may outreach 4 kilometers. This was confusing. So many sounds, and most of them she had never heard. She understood that she could never learn the secret of singing with the birds with printed words in a book. The woman decided to do everything in her power to learn directly from the air and the wind. She went outside. The woman set out to learn singing with the birds. She did not find what she was expecting. She came to realize that the story she had heard was not about actual birds and singing. Her quest led her to discover something which cannot be expressed with ordinary words. The term singing with the birds is a form of figurative language alluding to a state of being. The woman found that condition comparable to rapture. In this condition, she senses her origin, the source of life within herself, and she is connected with all that surrounds her.